So, guys, I'm here with Najib, and he is in Toronto. Isn't that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that a bed behind you?
That is a bed. Yes.
Okay, so like again, I don't know if you set the scene or whatever, but it's almost like you. So we're here to have a chat. Najib basically posted something on a private Facebook group. We met at an event called Mastermind Talks, and he posted something which I'll allow him to explain in a second, around finding a soulmate, finding a partner in life, etc. And while it's an area that I've done a lot of work with, I've done a lot of work with individuals and a lot of couples, respectfully, and I basically have met a lot of couples that have become somewhat kind of, distant or estranged from each other. So I kind of see it from a few different variations. Doesn't mean that I know it all, I'm far from it. So a lot of people kind of chimed in and gave some very solid advice, and some of it was very intellectual, which is great, but that can also be a challenge. And some of it was very just grounded and insightful and emotional. And I just said, listen, why don't we do a phone call? And the one ask I have is let's record it, which I don't normally do. And if it is of benefit to anybody else, both myself and Najib will choose to share it if that's appropriate. And if not, we won't. So maybe give us a little bit of context in terms of, why we're having this call and what your real question was all about.
Sure. So my name's Najib, and I run a social enterprise, basically in the entrepreneurial space. My question was largely because you see a lot of successful entrepreneurs who have quote unquote made it and been successful in the world's eye, and they often end up thanking their wives or their better half. And what you'll realize sometimes is it's not their first wife; it's usually second or third. And that started. It made me think even more into relationships even further, and start to think about, okay, well, personally, I want to be in a relationship, and unlike I guess a safe career path, entrepreneurs are inherently risky. From both, they have a lot of ups and downs. Not to say life doesn't, but I think they have a lot of ups and downs compared to a more of a safe career, stable path, whether it's financial to so because of this large polarity, I was just trying to figure out from entrepreneurs in our private Facebook group, to figure out what traits have they found to be successful with their significant other. Some people might be married, some people might not be. So I just say significant other or soulmate, but ultimately it's your other better half.
Yeah.
So that's where the conversation was posted, where it got started, and it was a fantastic discussion within it.
It's interesting, actually. I've never ever that word, those two words, your better half. Better half has never actually ever, stopped me and got me thinking, I've never reacted to that before until just now. And it's an interesting, your better half. And it's almost like saying, well, if you find somebody, you're at one. And by the way, no matter who you are at the core, they're better than you. And that they bring something to the relationship that you yourself either don't have, or they bring a goodness or a betterment to the relationship. And I do believe that, somebody else can elevate you in life. And I don't mean from an egotistical or a financial aspect, even though that may both occur. But they can kind of almost, I feel that sometimes a wonderful partner in life is somebody that can really just bring out the best in you. Not that they're a better part of you. And that's, it's just interesting. I don't want to dissect it and overthink it, but the better half, I just find that really interesting. And that's a term I've used myself, and I hear millions of people using. But is my wife my better half? I think there's a part of me that thinks I should say, yes. Yes, she is my better half. She has qualities that I don't have, which are not necessarily true. She might be more advanced in those qualities. She might be more caring, more empathetic, more whatever. It doesn't mean that I'm not. But I think sometimes I hear people saying, my wife is empathetic, but they say it in a way that they mean that they're not. My husband is so driven and competitive, as if to say I'm not. When in actual fact, the reality is that's not always true. It's just that maybe one more person is a bit more forceful. They have more space around that particular, let's call it a trait or aspect of their personality. Anyway, okay. So that was just a by the way, but it was interesting how it struck me.
Yeah. No. I completely agree with you. I think it's one of the terms that society uses, but without harping on that, I think a part of a relationship is also, it's you have first you're pardon me, first you're dependent, when you're growing up, you're dependent on your parents or whatnot, but then eventually you become independent. But I think when you're in a relationship, you become interdependent, so 1+1 = 3. And I think there's a lot of power in relationships through it. So for me, I was just trying to figure out, I would much rather be in a happy relationship that's thriving than in a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship.
Okay, so if I can just stop you right there for a second before I lose this point you made, as you say, you're dependent on other people, then you leave home or whatever the example of becoming independent, and then we become interdependent. We become independent, and then we become interdependent when we get a relationship. That's pretty much what you said. So I don't think that we rarely become dependent, like independent of everybody around us. And I think that's the problem. We move from houses where we're dependent on other people to situations where we're interdependent on other people, and vice versa. 1 and 1 = 3. But where does this independence from not just the aesthetics of our life, but on a much deeper level, our personal identity actually ever land? So therefore, what I'm suggesting is, and what I'm really coming to, is that we move from one situation where we're dependent or interdependent of somebody to another one where the same thing happens, albeit the dynamic and it shifts. But have we ever taken the time and taken the space to really, really do a deep dive on who we are as an individual and get to a point where we're so comfortable in our own skin that we don't need a relationship to make us happy? It's the cream, it's the bonus, it's the whatever. Because the amount of people I meet today, Najib, that feel, they may not think this, it may not make logical sense, but they feel it, that unless I'm in a relationship, there's always going to be something missing. Now, I think that's a tragedy, and I'll tell you why I think it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy because it's true for them. And I think therefore there's some part of them that's not functioning 100%. There's some part of them that they don't like. There's some part of them that's missing. And the other thing is, the other really dangerous side to this, if we really hold deep down this belief, not an intellectual belief, but this feeling that I will never be fully content and really happy unless I've got a great relationship, here's what happens. We often settle for a relationship that doesn't necessarily serve us. We turn off the intuition that's looking at this girl, looking at this guy saying, there's something you don't want to see, but you feel it because you're being driven by what you think or feel you need. And that is a relationship to make you happy. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, no, that's completely, once in a while, have you seen the movie Up in the Air by any chance?
No.
So without ruining the movie, there's a point in it where there's an issue about someone getting cold feet. And I think it's George Clooney who says, what's the point in getting married? You get old, you have kids, they move out, you retire and you pass away. What's the point in getting married? And then he stopped for a second and he realized, you know what? Everything you want to do in life, if you're passionate about it, you'd do it. Isn't it better to have someone there along with you? So I think, I completely agree. Not necessarily having a relationship just for the sake of it, or saying you're missing out. But I think it's, like you said, once you realize who you are, it's adding cherry, I guess, to the sundae, right? So
let's bring it back to you.
Sure.
Because otherwise we can talk around concepts and ideas and principles and philosophy around relationships and throw examples and stories out. So what's driving you to ask this question, to search for this? What's driving you?
Yeah. So I guess part of it's also it's a few things. So one is, I guess, there's somewhat of a yearning to have someone else in the picture. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily from a societal perspective or, kind of seeing friends around. That could be part of the reasons. And that's kind of so that's one thing, but the other element is, so the yearning, but it's also, actually, you know what? I think it's largely the yearning, by having someone with me, and I guess along like a partner in crime, so to speak. So I think that's one thing, but at the same time, I don't want to necessarily just have a partner just for a partner's sake, right? So I think it's one of the most important decisions you can make in your life, who you spend your time with.
But
So
I think therein lies one of the challenges for you as an individual, that you're making it a decision. And to me, a decision is very intellectual. It can be informed by the emotion, but it is so intellectual. And when you go to buy a Volvo or a Tesla, is there a little bit of emotion and ego and different things floating around? Absolutely. But it really comes down to an intellectual decision. Like, which one is more economical? Which one makes me look better? Which one do I want to drive? Which one is more comfortable? Which one is the bigger seats? Which one is the better stereo? When it comes to human beings, we can, but I think it's hugely detrimental to approach it in the same vein. And I know you're not exactly approaching it like that, but there's parts of how you describe it that it is a decision. And therefore, you're looking for traits to look out for, or not, as the case may be. It's almost creating a persona of the perfect person that fits who you are as an entrepreneur, as an individual, what you need, what you don't need. And to me, the minute you try to control, because that's about control, that's about controlling the outcome. Okay?
Yes. I agree.
There's a degree of control there. The minute you try to do that with another human being, you're not open to what you cannot see. In other words, you have a persona of the person that fits the model, but you're not open to the fact that, number one, it could be wrong, and number two is the person sitting over here that doesn't fit the model could actually be the perfect fit for you. If I just distill it all down, it's, if I had to distill that, this point down, if I could, it's like you're asking intellectual questions, looking for intellectual answers from an emotional issue. Relationships are about emotion. It's about how someone makes you feel, really. And that's the most successful relationships in the world. It's not what someone does. And if it comes to that, see, if you enter a relationship like that, it'll always come back to haunt you, because what they do never meets the expectations that you have in your head. And the reason for that is because they're imperfect, because they're human. So my question that leads on to that is, how much of your time, and I just need you to be really honest, it's not a scientific question, but how much of your time do you spend in your head intellectualizing on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being all the time and 1 being not at all?
Like throughout the day, throughout the week?
Yeah.
I guess when I'm not working, I would say 4 out of 40, 50% perhaps. Yeah.
And when you're working?
I try not to think about it. Yeah. Like, I don't know, maybe 10. Yeah.
Okay. So to me, there's a conflict there in terms of your numbers. So my sense is you spend a lot more time in your head than you think.
Okay.
Way more.
Okay.
Like, way more.
Okay.
And I don't think we should separate it, or you should separate it, or we as individuals should separate it between our work and our personal life, because it's very hard to draw a line at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. I don't think you can draw a line, and entrepreneurs definitely don't know how to draw the lines between work and play in many respects, particularly how they feel and how they think. So if you're a very logical thinker, which by the way is not a criticism, it's not something to be frowned upon or whatever, because what it does is it allows you in an intellectual and in a business and a professional space to problem solve, to create, to implement, to create a strategy and use the tactics to do that. The challenge is when we try to apply that methodology to a relationship, we're fucked. Sorry to be direct, but we are, because we're talking about people, we're talking about emotion, we're talking about something that cannot be controlled. Does not stop us necessarily trying to control it like we do as entrepreneurs.
Sure.
For example, one of the most frustrating things in the world is to be married and to live with an entrepreneur or person that's entrepreneurial spirited or whatever. And I'll tell you why, because they just problem solve. And my wife, when she'd come to me and say, I've got this issue, I wouldn't not just listen, but really hear and feel what she's saying. Before she'd even finish her sentence, I go, yeah, but you got to do this. And the reason that's happened is because you haven't done this. So the solution is great in business, but it pisses her off because I didn't really hear her. I listened, but I didn't hear. And the other thing that a lot of entrepreneurial men in particular do to their wives is they go, but honey, I just want you to be happy. Like, what the fuck does that mean? They don't even know what happiness is for them at a deep level. And we're saying it because we care. But like, I just want you to be happy. It's like just handing them a biggest box of expectation with a beautiful ribbon on it to your partner and saying, I just want you to be happy. In a world where most people are disconnected, it's a massive ask and expectation. So why do you yearn? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you yearn a lot. And reminder, we don't have to share this call. So I just want this call is for you. It's not for anybody else.
Right.
Okay. I'm here for you. It's not to sell you anything. It's not to promote it. It's just for you. I promise you. And you're also the guy that, by the way, when I was sick at Mastermind Talks in Ojai, you're the guy, correct me if I'm wrong, that went off and got me Tylenol or tablets and sourced me out and found me on that bus. And I felt like absolute shit and gave me those tablets. So you're a beautiful human being. And that's why I'm happy to spend the time with you today. But let's make this about you.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and be really honest. Okay. Yeah. 10 being you yearn off the charts for a relationship and 1 being not at all. Where would you be?
I would say it's between like an 8, 9, perhaps. Yeah.
That's okay. And thank you for being honest, because that's not something we necessarily want to tell people. Sometimes we feel embarrassed or shit. Well, I don't want to come across as desperate or whatever. But honestly, I feel overwhelming pressure from you about this relationship.
From me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for me to date you, but for you to find somebody to date. It's overwhelming. It's too important. And this is not what you'd hear from maybe relationship coaches or whatever, but it's too important to you. And therefore, and I'm curious to know why, but let me share something that I shared with you before we went on air. Is for 9 years, I've been living in Canada, and Canada's a wonderful country with amazing people, as if we share this, you see in front of me here today, including yourself, Najib. And for 9 years, I've been looking for permanent residency. And this is my permanent residency card. And out of initially protection of my family and giving us options and everything else, I explored living in the United States. And I've always loved America. I love American people. I've always had a lot of fun down there, despite some of the flack they get on an international level. I've always loved it. And it started out a bit of a necessity as looking for an option. And then it became a real reality that no, irrespective of our status in Canada, actually living in the States makes sense, not just for my business, but for who we are as people. And we made a decision, not just a physical, mental decision, but an emotional decision. That's what's very, very different. To let go of Canada temporarily, maybe, or long-term, we don't know, and actually move to the United States. And the very thing that was eluding me all of this time, which was this permanent residency card, 9 years of asking, long story, won't get into it now, showed up 3 days ago in the post. So my ask, and maybe it's a little bit premature in the context of this conversation, is I'm curious to know why it's so high, why it's so important to you.
Sure. So a few reasons. One is from a societal point of view, you see a bunch of my very close friends, they're in a relationship. And these are people who I hang out with often. The other side is partly from a religious perspective. So it's getting married is, from an Islamic point of view, it's one of the duties of the religion, as in it complete. Yeah, so it's part of religious and also societal. So I mean, I do have a parental, but I'm not, I don't necessarily have that much pressure from parental. That doesn't really influence me as much. Sorry, I cut you off.
So are you very religious yourself?
I am somewhat religious, yes.
Okay. So you're without getting in, because I don't get into religion, not just for obvious reasons. It's not a big part of my life. I'm very spiritual in many respects, but I don't get into religion because then it can get messy and people start arguing, debating stuff and everything else. But I want to be also very respectful at the same time, and that is that you almost went on as far as to say that in your religion, excuse me, that being married completes you. Is that almost what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's. Do you believe that at the core? Like, is that something you believe, or is that something, now bear with me here for a second, because this is really important. Or is that a belief that you've inherited? Because I talk about beliefs in maybe a slightly different way than people historically have heard about beliefs. And that is, and now I'm on the spot, I won't remember them, but there's not just things that we believe that are limiting beliefs. And we've all heard about limiting beliefs, like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees and money is evil and whatever. And we've all heard about those. But there's inherited beliefs, like beliefs that we inherit from our parents. And until we really look at those beliefs and challenge those beliefs and move away from those beliefs and let those beliefs go, we can never fully determine whether they're mine or they're inherited from my parents. Now, we can let go of those beliefs in order to step back in and hold on to them as our own. But when they're inherited, we haven't been asked. They've been given to us. Then we have the third one, which is the what I call the stealth bomber, which is basically the debilitating beliefs. These beliefs that we hold on to, irrespective of where they come from, that undermine us at the core. And one could argue, I'm not going to get into that debate today, but one could argue that if you believe that you will never be complete until you find somebody, one could argue that that is not necessarily the healthiest perspective. I'm not here to challenge, I'm just using that as an example. Sure. And then the final one is, what do we actually really believe ourselves? And when you're looking at it through all of these lenses here, parental and limiting and debilitating, it's very hard to establish through all the noise of society.
Right.
Hang on a second. Is this what I really believe? Or is this something that I've taken from somewhere else? So my question back to you, without getting into religion, do you really believe you will not be complete until you find somebody?
I don't think... it's not that I won't be complete, but it's by having someone else, it makes it better. Does that make sense?
Total sense.
Okay.
But you're also just suddenly become way more attractive. You've just suddenly become way more attractive. Think about and I'm playing a little bit, but this is what I do, right? You just become way more attractive because if you need something, what you're doing is you're holding on tight.
Right.
And I use this concept or talk about holding, if I can find something. So there's a little strap here. What we do is in society, we hold on so tight. I need somebody to be happy. I need somebody to be complete. This has to happen. And you either will attract, and I promise you this will turn out to be true, and people who listen to this in the future will probably resonate. You need something so bad, you end up getting the result intellectually, but it doesn't equate emotionally. In other words, you end up attracting the wrong person. And that's why divorce and split ups are so prevalent in the world and accelerating beyond the speed of light right now. But if you feel that person or another person, a beautiful soul, can enhance you as an individual and enhance your experience on this earth, what I'm asking you to do is let go. I'm not asking you to give up. I'm trying to remember there's a camera here. Giving up is turning your hand and giving up. I'm just asking you to let go and think about that in the context of this is a person or a seed or something. Nothing can grow when it's been held so tight. Nothing can breathe when it's been held so tight. But when we let it go, we don't give up. We let it go. It breathes and it enhances and it's fluent. And it's not a 7 or an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in terms of a need or a yearning or a longing. It's just something absolutely wonderful. The right person comes along. And in that moment, you've become a lot more attractive because now you don't need somebody. It's a bonus. So you end up opening yourself emotionally to attracting the right type of individual into your life, as opposed to sitting there at the bar. And I'm being facetious here, but sitting at the bar going, hey, I need your number now type of thing. And that's the feeling. The very time I met my wife, Najib, is the very time I did not want to meet another woman. I had a relationship, long-term relationship, had no interest in meeting anybody. And of course, what happens? I turn around metaphorically in life, and there she is. That's what happens. Now, I want to go back to one other thing.
Yeah.
parents, and I don't want to open this up for dialogue because I want to be respectful, because again, we've never had a call like this or a talk like this before, and you're not an ongoing client or anything like that. So I just want to be really respectful, and I really appreciate your honesty to date. Is you said that your parents don't put you under pressure.
As South Asian parents, they do, but they don't. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go again, trying to defend them.
Yeah, so they do. I'm not going to lie about it. It's just that they don't have pressure right now. So perhaps they've hinted at it, but perhaps in like a year or two, definitely it'll come up.
So it basically means it's already there and you're expecting it down the line.
That they are, yes.
Okay, a lot of pressure. So, Najee, I want to explain something here, okay? And I know I see you doing this and you're looking up and when you do that often, we go to the brain and it's, well, hang on a second, Philip. They only sent me one text in the last 6 months and said, are you married yet? Are you engaged? Or have you found somebody? So, but my friend, John, his parents are knocking on his door saying it. So intellectually, when I look up and I consider it, it's like, well, it's not a lot of pressure, Philip. So I don't know where you're going with this. Najib, I would suspect that your parents are putting you under enormous pressure by what they say and by what they do not say. And I need you to be open to this. And I'll tell you why I need to be open to this.
Yeah.
Is that we have this inherent ability and desire to protect our parents. So someone will say to me, what was your childhood like from a parenting standpoint? I go, oh, my dad was amazing. My mother was amazing. Mm-hmm. And if you just dig a little bit deeper, they were. But there's things they did, things they said, and certainly things they didn't say that wasn't so amazing, that didn't serve Philip McKernan, that make me sad when I consider them. And I look back and they didn't serve who I was. The minute I go to this space of saying, yeah, but they did the best they could, from an Irish Catholic standpoint, I didn't get it as bad as anybody else. The minute I do all of that, I'm rationalizing and justifying and defending them. Okay. But if I can have the courage to say, hang on a second, screw that shit. They didn't serve me the way I needed to be served. They didn't look after me. They didn't, support me the way I wanted in certain parts of my life. Then I can isolate the pressure, isolate the piece that doesn't serve me today that I'm still carrying. Mm-hmm. And then I can love them independently of this. Now, this is deep territory, but I really want you to get this, or not get it, but be open to it.
Okay.
I suspect that you're getting a lot more pressure from your parents, or the imminent pressure. In other words, it's not today, but it's coming.
Yes.
That's enormous. What age are you now?
I am 28.
So when I'm 30, boy, is this text message is going to be coming. Am I right?
Yeah, that's true.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Me and technology are a disaster. I leave the phone on, plugged in, ready to go, and I get on a call. So the point, so I apologize about that. So the pressure's there. It may not be evident in terms of many emails or conversations, but it's there and it's coming.
Yes. That's true, yeah.
You gotta address that at some level. Excuse me for 1 second. Plug out every line in the house here. You don't have to. That sounds like even more pressure. But the invitation is to consider how much of that is putting you under pressure, and the reminder is to consider pressure by what people say and what people do not say, particularly when it comes to parents. So when I decided to go to Canada to live my dream, to become a speaker and work with people and everything else, I told my mother, and my mother, who's one of my biggest supporters, said, that's great. So she said, that's great. But she didn't say that's great. She goes, that seems to be great for you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. And therefore, at the core, I doubted it myself.
Fair enough.
So what's going on for you right now?
No, just thinking about any sort of interactions that I've had with my parents. So there have been conversations about it. So I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than I am. So he got married around the same age that I am. So there's definitely pressure from parents, but it's a bit more relaxed than it was for my brother. Yeah.
But your makeup as an individual, your emotional state as an individual could be such where while it might aesthetically look like there's less pressure on you because he kind of blazed the path, if you like, and took a lot of the pressure, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a very, very significant impact on who you are as a human being. Because in Najib, I feel, and I believe, and I think I know, and it sounds arrogant to say when you say I know for a fact, but of all the work I've done with all the people, no matter how successful they are, like very, 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 very successful entrepreneurs on paper, we really do care what people think. And people that tell you they don't give a shit what people think or act as if they don't care what people think, it doesn't mean that they're beyond this. I think we all deeply care what people think about us. But if you take our parents into consideration and our close friends, but let's just isolate the parents for a second, you can multiply that by 1,000. We care deeply about how our parents feel about us, and therefore our actions around them, and how we conduct ourselves and how we move through life and the decisions we make and the pressures that we feel are accordingly. Now, it doesn't mean that what I'm saying here is your parents are bad people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying they want the best for you, and that's all they know. But at the same time, if you don't isolate the pressure, then there's nothing you can do about it, because now you're going into the world with all these strategies and traits to look for in women, and you write them all down, draw the picture of the perfect person, what they eat, what they don't eat, what they believe, what they don't believe, what they're, all these things. But emotionally, you want to please your parents. So the clock is ticking. And think about any business decision you've ever made. When you make a decision under real pressure and you're making it for reasons that are not fully aligned to who you are, it always goes south, or it doesn't work out fully. But if you move towards, being open to somebody, but without the pressure, think about the types of people that you'll attract into your life.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? Is there a question that you have about any of this?
I'm just trying to process it all.
Don't process it all. I know you process very fast. I need you to sit with it.
Okay.
And just allow it to land and not process it up here in this big, beautiful, amazing Apple computer of yours. And I say that I'm not slagging you. I'm not knocking you. I'm not slagging you off. This is amazing. I'd love to get an hour with that head of yours because it's magnificent. But when I'm really interested in what lies a little bit below the surface there, because this is brilliant. But like emotionally, how do you feel right now?
So emotionally, I guess it's a bit of, I don't even know how to describe the feeling. It's a bit of, I'm not sure if relief is the word, but a bit more clarity, if that makes sense. Not quite an emotion, but that's. I'm trying to not to stay over here, but really go down there. So,
you know what? Your face just says it all right now. That's the face that I want for you. I'm okay. I'm at peace right now. I'm okay. I feel less pressure. I'm at peace, and I don't expect it just to overnight. I mean, we've had 30 minutes, 40 minutes together. But I think if you really are open, which I know you are, and you really allow this to land, forget about me and what I've suggested, but where I'm going with this based on all the experience that I have. And again, I'm not a big expert in this. I people say I am, but I don't consider myself an expert in anything. It's just, this is what I do. But I just feel that you will be more relaxed. My big invitation to you is to let go of the need to have somebody in your life. And there is nothing more powerful than identifying something that you want in your life. And do this in business. It's phenomenal in business. But let go of the need for the outcome to present itself. And there's this beautiful gap in the middle where, if it happens, wonderful. It'd be great. But I don't need it to happen in order to be happy. And I'll tell you why it's wonderful, is that you're not then living every day for the future for this outcome. You're more present today. You're more alive today. You're more in tune today. Your life is in more flow today. When you get there, it's not all encompassing. It doesn't define your identity in your life. But here's what most entrepreneurs do. They create an absolute vision, which has merits, but they become way too attached to the outcome. And when they get to it, it's like going to the top of a mountain, getting to the top of the mountain, as I speak about, looking around going, I just sold my business for 20 million. I just turned over a business that's now doing 20 million, which I could never have dreamed of before. But it doesn't feel like I thought it would. And then what they do is they look across the horizon and go, the problem is I climbed the wrong mountain. And they go down off that mountain being a metaphor for life. They cross the meadows and they go to the next mountain and they keep this pattern going and going and going. But they don't stop and say, okay, no matter what summit I achieve, I don't ever feel that it's enough. So what am I not addressing? Well, what I'm not addressing is the personal conversation with me. Najib, all of this comes back to us. All of this comes back to us. This is not a relationship conversation. This is a relationship with you. And somebody said in that forum, you should do a retreat on how to find your perfect soulmate or something along those lines. And I said, well, actually, I already do. And some of my work is about helping people connect with, I believe, their real soulmate, which is themselves. Some people call it God, some people call it whatever, maybe God's in addition to that. But to me, there is no greater journey than connecting with oneself to the point where it's not egotistical, it's just that we become more connected. We're more in tune with who we are. We understand our story. We accept ourselves. We become more comfortable in our own skin. And that person has an outward confidence and a groundedness and an earthiness that is so fucking attractive. People want to be around you. They just want to be beside you because you just ooze this, not an arrogance, that's different because that's trying to put something on. It's trying to pretend that you have something you don't. But think about people in your life that you know that they just got some shit going on that you can't even put your finger on it, but they're so comfortable in their own skin, you want to be around them. The same principle applies when you're looking to attract other people. This is not about how do you get the partner. It's about how you position yourself and who you are so the right person shows up. It doesn't mean you don't have to go to the bars. It doesn't mean you don't have to put yourself in a dating site. It doesn't mean you don't have to make yourself available. I'm not talking about the law of attraction in the sense that you just sit in your room and they just show up at your door. That's not what I'm talking about. But positioning yourself to be open but not attached to the outcome is magic. It is beyond magic. In life, in relationships, and in business, it is incredibly powerful.
Interesting. It's the thoughts that are going through my head. It's like, it's not necessarily like focus on systems and results, and it's trying to look at, okay, well, what's the so I think there are two things in it. One is the constant belief that you need to kind of really inject yourself, as much as you don't want to tie yourself to the result. You kind of also do. Does that make sense?
It might make sense. I didn't get it 100% myself. So
so it's like, so I might not want a girlfriend, or rather, I'm not going to tie myself to the idea of having a girlfriend by a certain date. Obviously, I'm going to be open to it, but then I think like there might be a few instances where I might just be shit. I can kind of not use like, I mean, I can kind of be with someone right now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the thoughts, really, because I do affirmations in the morning, so it's kind of like having that element in the morning where you kind of frame yourself like, okay, this is the type of life you want to have, but at the same time living the rest of the day by not tying to the end result. Yeah. So I'm just
why do you do affirmations?
I think it does. Personally, I just recently started doing it. I think it does two things. One is it helps me reaffirm to myself what is it that I want, which I guess somewhat ties into the whole results. But I think the other thing is also subconsciously, it helps me um, it helps me become the type of person to attract the end result or the systems or behaviors that I want in myself as well. So
right,
whether
because I'm more interested personally in not what you want, but who you are.
okay.
And what's interesting is that conversation tends to be absent in our lives when we focus so much on the future and so much. And there's that strategic head of yours again that just lives so much in, what you can create and everything else. And I think that is a lot of people would say very useful and very effective, but it also comes at a tremendous cost. And that's what I've seen. There's just this sense of this, and also just pressure on you. I mean, expectations. Let's just talk about expectations for a second. So your expectations on yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really, really high, 1 being not at all, as he goes up into his head, right? And I would ask you, because it's, what day is today? Tuesday?
Today is Tuesday. Sorry, okay. Wednesday.
Okay, yeah. Well, fuck it. Let's Wednesday. Because it's midweek, I'm going to give you special permission to go to 12 on that scale if you want to, just for today.
Okay.
Where would you be?
For which expectations?
Expectations on yourself and pressure that you put on yourself. Not what you would like them to do.
Expectations, I would say, yeah, it's up there, like probably 10. Right.
Exactly.
But like lately, what I've been trying to do is not necessarily focus on the result itself, but also think about the systems. Like, so if I, for example, just use this as an example, if I want a 6-pack, instead of focusing on hitting a weight for the gym or getting a certain type of results, I just focus on the systems, which is how can I be the best version that I'm focusing on right now, and the results will come. But unfortunately, I haven't been doing that in the whole relationship side of things.
Okay. So how's the 6-pack going?
Good.
Do you have it?
I have a 4-pack.
Okay. So here's my point is that the 6-pack is it might be bordering on achievable, but not sustainable. And I'll tell you why it's not sustainable, because again, you're taking an intellectual approach to the 6-pack. And while the systemized approach allows you to achieve something temporarily or even long-term,
sure,
we haven't dealt with one issue, and that is, why do you want the 6-pack? I'm not asking you to answer that today.
Sure.
Why do you want 6-pack? Why do you care what people think? Why do you need it? Because you want to attract a relationship in your life, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole realm of conversation underneath, which is driven 90% by emotion, if not more, which I believe has the people talk about golf. It's all such a mental game. It's not a fucking mental game. It's an emotional game. It is all about emotion when you dig under the surface from the mindset issue that we've all read about. There's a billion books on mindset, a billion podcasts on mindset, a billion lectures on mindset. And yet, arguably, there's more divorce, disconnection, social challenges in the world today. So to me, the mind is overrated completely, which is, I know I'm getting into a different area here. So again, yes, the results, you could say I have 4-packs on, whatever percentage, 70, 80% there, or whatever the number would be. My thing is, there's just another conversation that lies outside of that intellectual, tactical approach to something. And that's the thing I don't think it's fully missing. I just don't think you've given it the respect that perhaps it needs. And I think if you can bring that into your life, I honestly believe you'll have tremendous, unbelievable results. I have worked with people, Najib, and I've amongst business conversations and the difference between our gift and our talent and helping them get clear on their message and all that stuff. We've also covered a lot of relationship territory. And every time that we've gotten to the core of why they feel they need a relationship and encourage them not just to intellectually say, okay, I'm too attached, I'm going to let go, but emotionally let go. Boom. Almost every one of them have met somebody. If they've truly let them go. Almost every one of them have met somebody and are in a better place right now, but not just anybody. They've met somebody. They met somebody that enhances them, somebody that they're more connected with. So the point of this call, as it's kind of gone, and this was not my hope, it was my sense that it might happen, but I wasn't attached to where it would go, is that again, it all comes back to us as individuals. It all comes back to who we are at the core and what's going on for us. And the pressure and the expectation that you put yourself under, while it might be, and by the way, just on expectations, there might be entrepreneurs that listen to this in the future. Anybody that listens in the future go, hang on a second, you're saying expectations are not good. without expectations and high expectations, I don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't make that extra phone call. I don't do that extra grind. I'm sorry, I disagree. I think you can lower expectations or let go of expectations without losing the desired result. Expectations don't necessarily equal success. They don't. Expectations equal results, but often those results are not aligned with who we are. Look, I have a girlfriend. Look, I have a multi-million dollar business. Look what I did. And because my expectation was so high, my vision was so high, I achieved it all. Yes, but are you happy? Well, I'm misaligned. It's not really the work I ever wanted to do. Myself and my wife or my boyfriend, my girlfriend, we're not as connected as I'd like to be, as my friend John down the road is. So you can achieve things, but at what cost? Because the alignment is the most important thing here. So my question for you here's, okay, so let's begin to wrap. And here's what I'm gonna ask you to consider as we leave the call. Mm-hmm. Because often when you finish a call like this, somebody says, okay, that was great. Or maybe they don't, maybe they say it was crap, but what now? And the problem with what now is often we want 5 steps to walk away with. But I would like you to walk away and consider the following. Mm-hmm. Number one, in no particular order, why are you so hard on yourself? Why do you have such high expectations? I would like you to sit with that, journal with that. Don't freak out about it. Don't intellectualize it. Just sit with it and just start to understand and really emotionally connect with where that comes from. Don't judge it. Don't try to join the dots. Don't try to over process it, and just be with it and trust where that goes. That's number one. Number two, and again, in no particular order, I'd love you to consider the possibility of having a conversation with your parents at some point, if required. So the most important conversation that people think, often they think it's an external conversation, but the most important conversation in the world always starts at home, always. Maybe today what will happen for you is it'll be uncovered that maybe your parents put you under more pressure than you think. And that maybe that pressure is not serving you. Maybe that pressure is putting you, moving you in a direction that's inauthentic. And therefore likely that you will make a decision that's not fully in alignment with who you are. And I'd like you to sit with that. And it may require, and I emphasize the word may require, an additional conversation externally to your mom and dad, if they're both alive and both here, just say, listen, guys, I appreciate you want the best for me, but I need you to back away. I need you to give me the space. I know you mean good, but it's not serving me. And often we go to a place of thinking, well, that conversation, my parents aren't open to that. My parents are too old, they're too this, whatever. Well, of course, that's the case if that's what you believe. But sit and have the conversation with yourself. And if you honestly feel that that external conversation is required, which often it is, I would encourage you to consider how that would look. I wouldn't rush to have the conversation. In other words, don't do it today, tomorrow, next week. Right. That's the thing when people execute, they execute intellectually. They go, yeah, I had the conversation. How did it go? Well, it didn't go great. Well, of course it didn't go great because you didn't have it with yourself first. You didn't sit with it, absorb the conversation. And I'm going to finish with a little story. Mm-hmm. And I'm debating which. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. Actually, I have to tell you 2 little stories. I'm sorry, but I do. And the number one is I remember doing an event in Toronto, actually, and I was in the room. And this girl said, my parents treat me in a particular way. And I don't know what her religion was and what her background was and everything else, but there was this expectation that she couldn't be a single mother. So she left her husband, an abusive relationship, didn't serve her, and she left. And the pressure on from her parents on her, she thought was normal, but it was overwhelming. What our normal is, what we're used to, is often overwhelming for somebody else. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, in our religion, you shouldn't be single. And I said, your parents are telling you that. I said, well, tell me what your parents are saying. So she said, well, I go for coffee or I go for tea and they tell me you shouldn't be single. You shouldn't be a single mother. You have no right to do that. It's not fair on your kids, not whatever. And I said, why are they doing that? And she said, well, because they're religious. And I said, maybe. Why are they doing that? Well, because they're older. Maybe. Why are they doing that? Because they were Indian, African, fucking European, whatever. I can't remember where she was from. I said, why are they doing it? And she goes, because they want the best for me. I said, why are they doing it? And of course, you can imagine it gets very frustrating after a while. She goes, Philip, I don't know. And she gets really angry. She looks at me. And I said, because you're allowing it. I said, because you're the one going for cups of tea. And you're the one allowing the conversation to happen over and over and over and over and over again. And then straight away she jumps and says, oh, but you don't know my mom and dad. They're never going to change. And I said, well, of course they're never going to change because you are enabling the conversation every single day. She says, well, what would you expect me to do? And I said, well, let's just role play it. Hey, Mom, how you doing? Great. Do you want a cup of tea? Yeah, I'd love a cup of tea. And I'm her and she's being her mother. And she says, so have you thought about getting back with your ex-husband? Mom, I really don't want to talk about that today. Well, we have to talk about it. You can't be selfish. And I said, Mom, there's your cup of tea. Thank you. I really hope we get to a point where I, as a daughter, can come here and that you can support me, or we can have beautiful conversations where you're not lecturing all the time. You obviously don't understand why I left my husband, because it was so sad and hurt for me to live with him. I'll see you next week for a cup of tea. Let's do it again. And we did it. And I said, okay, Mom, if that's the way you can. And I said, and she said, how long do you go on for? And I said, well, you basically say the next week you do the same thing. I said, Mom, if you can't do this, well, what's the point of us meeting together? If and when you're ready to listen to me, I'm available and I'll be here for you. That's just an example. In other words, she had to take responsibility. She had to change the game. She had to change the conversation, because waiting for her parents is probably never going to happen. Story number one. Story number two is I worked with a beautiful gentleman a number of years ago. Youngish guy in his mid-20s, and suddenly started to become quite under pressure around finding a relationship. Good looking guy, smart, entrepreneurial, very driven. And he rang me one day and he said, McKernan, he said, yeah. I said, I've got this plan. It's a dream manifesto. And I said, what is that? And he said, a dream manifesto is this. It's a written document of the perfect person, the perfect traits, the perfect body, the perfect this, the whatever that. This woman that's going to come into my life. Not I want, but is going to come into my life. Like absolute belief in it. And I said, great. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, honestly, I said, I'm not a big fan of intellectualizing how someone should look, because we're talking about people here. It's not a business. It's not a product. It's not an online thing. It's not a training program. It's not a widget. I goes, no, I think you're wrong. Mark my words, this person will turn up. And he had like leg size, boob size. I mean, you name it, color, hair, everything, right? Personality traits, driven, broken down, things he didn't want in them. Anyway, 3 months later, the phone call came and he said, Philip, you're wrong. This person showed up. It's almost like a mirror image of my dream manifesto. And I said, well, sometimes it's nice to be wrong. I hope you're happy and good luck with it. 3 months later, another phone call came and said, I forgot to put on my dream manifesto that this person should not be psychotic. He said, the relationship's over. And that's a true, but there's a true story. The timelines may be slightly different. I can't remember exactly the time frames. The point I'm trying to make is I don't think we can over-intellectualize and to develop a clear picture of who the type of person is. When the right person comes along, it's not, your intellect shouldn't even play. Your intellect's going to be shoved out of the way if you allow it. And it's going to be a feeling. And nothing has ever changed in society that I believe that, but I think the problem is we're intellectualizing people so much. And then we create these expectations. And the reason that we create the expectations is because that's what we do with ourselves. And I would argue, Najib, right now, is there any woman in the world that could meet your expectations?
I'm tempted to say no, but it could be that I haven't met her yet. But having heard your second story, it leads me otherwise.
Could she even, I'm assuming, by the way, it's a girl, and maybe I'm wrong there.
Yes. Yeah.
Today, you just got to be more open to whatever. But can any girl meet the expectations of a man who puts himself under that much expectation? Because what you'll find is the love will not wear out, but that excitement, that honeymoon period, it's real. It's to the point where when they chew with their mouth open, you think it's cute, even though it drives you mad in society. But then you move beyond that, and the longevity of the relationship is based on expectations and not just communication. It's based on, are they prepared to grow as an individual and grow with you, but grow it within themselves so you don't need them. They're not as reliant on you and vice versa. But listen, I could go on and on all day. I don't want to do most of the talking. I think we've gone back and forth enough. So I'm going to suggest we've done almost an hour. So I'm going to suggest we leave it at that. I suspect we could do another hour. Is there any specific question or anything you want to finish with, or are you happy to leave it there?
Yeah, I think one of the key, not to say takeaway, but I think one of the things that was more eye-opening for me personally is just that to not only know myself better, but know why, and not to really be tied with the end result. I think for me, that's it's always what you see in whether it's movies or anywhere else, where you see when you're truly confident and know who you are deep down, that's when, I don't know, it just everything seems to be a magnet towards you.
Totally.
So I think that's the one thing that, not to really say a takeaway, but really something that I need to really think about more.
Yeah.
So,
And the one thing I'll say, particularly for people who are listening, is I can't tell you how many people I meet that go, oh yeah, no, I have that figured out. Yeah, no, I know who I am. I've done some work. I did a week on a mountain 6 years ago and I know who I am. Horseshit. I don't know anybody that knows who they are fully, and nor I think is that ever achievable, by the way. So just be open to the fact that sometimes, and that is an overriding reaction from an intellect. Oh no, I know who I am. But actually, if you sit there and you really are honest with that question, do I really, really know who I am at the core? In other words, and that's an identity issue. It's an identity challenge. Is like, do I know who I am? And therefore, who I want to become or who I want to stay. And therefore, what I want is a byproduct of that. But in society today, we're more focused on what we want. And we assume that what we want is in alignment with our identity, but it's not. And that's why so many people are disconnected when they achieve something. They get married. They think this is the perfect man or woman for them. And then 6 or 8 or 9 years later, there's this void. And then they're wondering, and then they're blaming their wife. So the reason that this is not working, she's not growing or he's not growing. The reality is that that's partly true. But did you take the space and the time to get to know who you really are and therefore who you want to be in the future? And that sounds kind of fluffy, but I'm telling you one thing, it's seriously fucking cool. It's seriously cool. And if I could turn back the clock, I'm not very old, despite how I look. If I could turn back the clock to your age, and I don't want to be condescending here at all, but I think that I would have loved someone to invite me into that space and that challenge and say, take the time now to get to know who you are, because the person that you'll meet today versus the person you might meet in 6 months or a year or 2 years might be very different. And that's the difference between being aligned and having a wonderful relationship that stays together, that you don't need, you're not dependent on each other to the point where it's suffering. You both are independent. And this notion of getting on the same page, that's another illusion. That's all about control. People, are often opposites attract, and then we spend the next 5, 10 or 15 years trying to get that person to see the world like you do. So it becomes, those relationships that we're drawn to often become about control, and it just goes down a path that's not necessarily serving either party. But I want to say thank you for your honesty and openness, and I really appreciate the time today. And let's stay on the call, but I'll just finish the recording there, if that's okay. Yeah. Do you want to say goodbye or anything?
Yeah. Actually, I'll have one question if you're still recording.
Yeah.
This is perhaps for people who are watching this in the future. As males versus females, in the whole, I guess, dating kind of relationships, males are typically the pursuers. So how do you kind of balance out, for females or males who are listening to this in the future, how do you kind of balance out not being results oriented, being open, versus when you see someone really going after, like in your case, like when you met your wife because you weren't looking. So how do you kind of balance that out?
I'm not sure what you mean by balance it out. It sounds like maybe just go a little bit deeper on that one. What do you mean?
Yeah. So it's like you're completely being open to not really quote unquote chasing someone, like trying to see. So every girl you see, it's like, oh, okay, can I ask her out? Can I ask her out? Can I ask her out? So not being tied to it, but really, like you said, just know yourself better, being present, and be happy with whatever the outcome is. How do you kind of balance not really chasing after all the girls, so to speak, versus when you come across someone, how do you kind of go, like, ask her out? Right.
As you're describing that, I'm not sure it's I know you're saying how do you balance it out, but that's assuming you want to balance it out. It's almost like you're asking, this is what I feel when you're asking this question, is what I feel is you're saying, how do I be me and be open if I can get to that place where I'm open to what comes?
Right.
But how do I contrast that next to my buddies who are chasing and what's expected in society?
Well, not what's expected, but rather when you see someone,
but it is expected. As guys, you're expected to chase. You're absolutely expected to chase.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that is a societal thing. That's your buddies. That's over here. What I'm saying is if you get comfortable enough with who you are,
right,
you don't need to chase. It's not about chasing. It's about being open. Now, nor does it mean you lock yourself in an igloo
Sure.
in the Antarctic, and you basically don't do anything, they're going to just fly to you. You put yourself out there. You go to parties, you go to whatever, but you don't go, hey, yeah, I'll go to this party, but how many girls are going to be there? And by the way, how many are single? I'll make that decision strategically based on, or else I'll take this nightclub, opening VIP party. Suddenly you manufacture the whole fucking thing. You don't pursue. You let go of the need to pursue. You let go of. You don't balance it out. Well, and I'm being silly now to make a point. Well, I'll pursue and chase Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Thursday or Friday I'll give this letting go shit a go. You don't do it. You just become. It's all one. It's
right.
Just you're gonna choose if you own this and if you believe in this.
Right.
And if it's a more authentic reflection of who you are, I'm gonna just take a step back. I'm gonna dig in a little bit deeper into my own life, and I'm not going to pursue, but I'm going to be open. And unless you're a hermit that never goes out, you're going to be meeting girls, and trust the feeling and that piece of attraction that the right time and the right thing will show up where you go, hey, this sounds really weird. And this is not as slick as my buddy John would do it, but I fucking really I want your number. I want to buy you a drink. I want to get to know you or whatever. And it's organic. Oh God, did I just say the word organic? Dare I say organic with relationships? Think about it. I mean, you put on your makeup, you put on your lipstick, you put on your perfume, and no, I'm not talking about you, and you head out to a nightclub and you do this thing, you put on your suit or whatever you put on, and you go out, and historically, sometimes we often go to places we don't even want to go to, but because we want to be around other single women and men or whatever. And then we meet people. Are we meeting people as authentic and as grounded, as aligned to who we are? Or do we find ourselves meeting people in a place where we're trying to be something that we're not? And then we fall for them, but we forget to take the mask off. And eventually the mask comes off in the relationship. So you start to show up how you really are. You can't fake that shit. And you start to say, shit, this woman or this man I married, that's not really what I thought they were. And then we blame them. But in reality, we chose not to see it because we came in with our own mask. Now, you see, this is what the challenge. I'm getting into much deeper territory here, which is very, in my opinion, very valid. But it's much deeper than where we were, which is fine. But there's no balancing. Don't try and balance. Because the minute you try and balance, you're trying to balance. You're trying to balance. That's the point. All right?
Fair enough. I think, Phil, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And for everyone who's watching, watch it again. I know I'm going to right after this.
Well, listen, it's not, and I really appreciate you saying that, but this is not just about me. This is about you. People keep thinking, say to me, oh, you've got a gift, you've got this, whatever. That's fine. What they don't understand is I'm only as good as the person I'm working with or talking to. The person that has made this hour or an hour and whatever it happens to be, honestly, is you. Yeah, I come in, I do my thing and everything else, and I know I see the world maybe a little in a particular way or whatever. And I have to own some of that because otherwise I'll be disrespectful. But if you decided to be closed and defensive and controlling in this conversation, it wouldn't have gone where it went. So back to you, my friend. All right.
Thank you so much, Philip.